I continue to believe that experiential is grossly underrated. I think that brands need to sample more, Jim, to be frank, and definitely for consumables. I think about the Super Bowl. If you're Nerds, if you're Reese's, if you're Oreo, if you're any of the brands that were also running Super Bowl spots, to me, next year in New Orleans, do a heavy experiential and sampling campaign Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, film it all day long, and then have creative to support your spot in social the day of the Super Bowl and even the 24 hours after. I think it's a really interesting tie-in.
Attention is the #1 asset.
Welcome, welcome, welcome everybody to the Super Bowl after party. Super Bowl 58. This is our 6th after party. And I think we've done, Gary, how many Super Bowl spots have we done in the past 6 years?
12. Which
12.
Is a great number, because that is Joe Namath's number, and that is the quarterback that brought the Jets their only Super Bowl victory.
Oh my goodness. All right. Well, let's bring Gary Vaynerchuk. And where is Jim Stengel from the CMO podcast?
Hey, everyone.
We're super fired up to have.
Good morning, good afternoon. Welcome to the party.
We've got so many CMOs and so many brands to talk to us today about the Super Bowl. Jim, if you can take it away.
Absolutely. Hey, it's good to see everyone. Welcome to our annual party. We've done this in person in past years, right, Gary? Which is even more fun, but with the snow in New York, et cetera, this is the better way to do it this year. Hey, it was an amazing game, amazing experience. Gary was there live. I was not. I was in Dallas with a bunch of my childhood friends having a reunion and going to basketball games and watching it on a big screen and enjoying lots of consumer products. Some are represented on this show. So Gary, you were there for the whole experience. You popped down to San Diego. You're back in New York now. So tell us about this Super Bowl experience. What was it like this year? What was different from past years? What was trending? What should people on this call, on this video, in this party know about?
So first of all, hi everybody. Happy New Year to those that I haven't seen yet this year. Please use the chat, because I think it's really important that all of you get to know each other. So everybody, if you could please say where you are physically now, where you work, what you do. I think it'd be nice for all of you to get to know each other more. Jim, being on the ground, I think the thing that I first noticed in comparison, and I'll contextualize this for the group, including things like the ANA or NBA All-Star Game or Cannes, there was a happiness I was happy about. Like, there was good joy. There was a lot of positivity, which is interesting, because if I'm being transparent, I really kind of spent the most part of Q3, Q4, 2023 prepping for 2024 to be a contentious year with politics and all this. And so that struck me very heavily, that there was just a lot of good vibes. And Vegas is kind of like, it's a fun place, at least for me in your 20s, but it's become a place that I really have no interest in going to. And I felt like it was an incredible host for Super Bowl. Logistically, I think you're going to hear from a lot of friends, executives, people that went to the game. If you know people that are in event marketing or in sports, I think they did such a good job that I'm predicting that Vegas may have the Super Bowl every 3rd or 4th year in the coming years. The logistics were outrageously strong. It was so easy to get to everything. I was very taken aback by that part. And then I think from a business standpoint for everyone, I think the big opportunity that I noticed, and I saw some tiny brands doing it, and I'm sure other big brands did it because it's a serendipity of how I was moving around town all week. I continue to believe that experiential is grossly underrated. I know why it's underrated, because I'm empathetic that none of you can get it measured properly in your organization. It's hard to measure, right? But the
Gary, what do you mean when you say experiential? Why is
I mean sampling. Yeah, I think that brands need to sample more, Jim, to be frank. Literally touch the product, whether it's a consumable or even, I'll use your old world, even whether it's a bag of detergent or even something that people can't even use there, a deodorant. Nobody's going to grab it and take it on the spot, socially awkward. But I think touching product is, and definitely for consumables. I think about the Super Bowl. If you're Nerds, if you're Reese's, if you're Oreo, if you're any of the brands that were also running Super Bowl spots. To me, next year in New Orleans, do a heavy experiential and sampling campaign Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, film it all day long, and then have creative to support your spot in social the day of the Super Bowl and even the 24 hours after. I think it's a really interesting tie-in. So I thought there was some interesting experiential little things from like startup direct-to-consumer brands that caught my attention. I think some of the big brands on here could be doing it. So happy, logistically strong. I was pleasantly excited about just the general temperament of human beings, which is something I pay attention to a lot.
Did you meet any new friend, old friend who blew you away by what they're up to, what you talked about?
That's a good question. I mean,
I'm a podcast host. I ask good questions.
there was a lot of, that's fair. And you have a great podcast voice, by the way.
Thank you, Gary. Well, you made it happen, but that's another story.
Stacy and Michael from the PepsiCo team, I had a really productive lunch with them. It was really good to see them. Leslie from Verizon. Yeah, I mean, we saw a lot of people, new friends. Randy Moss came to one of our events, which was fun for me. Like 18-year-old me nerded out on. Yeah, I mean, I think, you know, that's always the reason anyone here should ever consider to go to these things is the serendipity of the relationships you make, the doubling or the serendipitous new friend.
Yeah. Well, listen, for everyone, here's our game plan today. We're going to have 3 roundtables with about 3 CMOs in each roundtable. Each one was involved in the game, had a spot, had an experience. Open Door had a really interesting approach this year, Gary, on experiential. We'll talk about that later. So we're going to go 15 or 20 minutes with each group. It's going to be great fun, high energy. I'll try to navigate it. I'll do my best. Gary, I want you to tell our listeners what you would think we should listen for in the next hour.
You know, I think, listen, friends, it's why I kind of went quickly on the last question. I'm just trying to think about how do I bring the most value? I really believe the most value in what we're about to do, knowing all of you are busy. Please use the chat as your friend. I'm literally, as Jim just asked me, literally my screen now says a lot of, and just says a lot of, because I was going to say a lot of you haven't said hello yet. I mean, look, I'm all about some people are extroverted, some people are introverted. But if you can't communicate in chat on a live stream, then we're really missing the mark here. So please be active. Like to Jim's point, some of the people in this room are your future partners. Some of the people in this room are going to hire you on a board one day. Like, please, this is for us. And we've seen this blossom with Andrea and Jim and now Avery joining us from a CMO capacity. Like, we're very passionate about the karma and collateral goodness that a community can create. So please don't be passive here, at least in the chat. And so as people are talking, let's get the juices.
Absolutely. And also ask some questions. If you want something, you want us to bring something up, we'll be watching it. We can't get to all of them, but give us some ideas for questions and we'll do our best to integrate it. So let's go. Round table, post party, number 1. Come on, bring them in. All right, we've got Brett. Super. Got Russell. And we've got Corey. Well, hello. Good to see your faces. So thank you for kicking off roundtable number 1. We have for our listeners, we have Brett O'Brien, CMO at Frito-Lay. Dina and Rita, my wife's watching it at breakfast this morning, laughing, watching it over and over and over again. We have Russell Wager, the Perfect 10 spot, VP of Marketing for Kia America, emotional, top 10 ad meter spot. And we have Corey Marchesotto, CMO of Elf and Key Soul Care. On the Super Bowl, really fun spot, Judge Beauty. Again, a top winner in ad meter. So we've got some people who did some amazing work on Super Bowl Sunday and around that. So listen, I want to introduce yourself to our listeners by telling us which spot, which experience, which promo during Super Bowl weekend was your favorite and why, and make it snappy. We just want to get to know you that way. So Brett, why don't you start? Our man from Frito-Lay.
Yeah. So hi, and pumped to be a part of the conversation, and thanks for having me join in. Yeah, my favorite moment of the Super Bowl, to be honest, was what totally unexpected. We found out the night before. We to Gary's point, we did a big activation right under the New York Casino, and we had a Cheetos chapel that was that was hosted by
I saw
Chester
that.
Cheetah. And two of our employees called us and said, "Hey, we're engaged and would love to get married. Could we actually do it?" And so we held a wedding at the Chester Cheetah Chapel. And it was, I mean, literally like everybody was crying. There wasn't a dry eye in the place. It was awesome. And yeah, that was pretty, it was this emotional, putting people together in a forum that we didn't anticipate. And it was pretty magical. So love that part.
If I may, Brett, I know a lot of Vayner employees on here, anyone who in the future wants to support an activation with such an aggressive life decision, it's an immediate promotion. Just need you to know that.
That's right. Like, hell yes, we're getting married. Let's do this. This is awesome.
I was reading a story in Ad Age this morning about what drives great results, creative effectiveness. It's creativity combined with empathy. Gary talks about it. So you nailed it there. Creativity and empathy, baby.
There was a lot of empathy. It was awesome. It was really
so Corey,
great.
How do you follow that? So your favorite ad experience, promo, wedding, whatever you might in the Super Bowl weekend?
So I have never actually been to the Super Bowl physically before, Jim. So it was a pretty extraordinary moment for me. And I had the childlike wonderment of a kid running around a candy store. And my favorite part was the communal aspect of it. And I think that's the beauty of what the NFL brings, period. It is one of the only moments where people have a communal viewing experience, whether at home or at the big game itself. And whether it was going to the incredible party that VaynerMedia threw and getting together with friends and talking about the, energy and excitement and emotion that we all had, or I really loved the moment at the NFL tailgate with TikTok where Gwen Stefani, sorry, but she is still a badass.
Yeah.
It was just an extraordinary moment. And the energy of the game. It was just very fulfilling, very soul lifting. And you left there feeling like, Gary, to your point, experiential, bringing humans together is everything.
Yeah, to that point, Corey, this is the last year we're doing this on Zoom, Jim.
Yeah.
Brett will have to fly from Texas. It is what it is. Like, we're just going to have to.
It is what it is.
In person.
Yeah, I love it. I love it. So, hey, quick favorite ad that wasn't yours. Quick, one word. Corey.
Sorry, quick what?
Favorite ad during the Super Bowl that was not yours.
I'm going to have to go with Duncan.
Dunking's okay.
I was
Good.
just blown away by the creativity and the humor and the emotional truth.
Brett, how about you? I should have asked that. Your favorite one that wasn't yours.
Yeah, so you should know this about me is I'm from Boston, so you could probably assume which one.
I know what you love.
All
right, Russell.
Call out the Yankees on national TV. I'm good.
All right, Russell, over to you. Kia. Very sentimental, very emotional spot. What was your favorite Super Bowl ad promo experience?
So I'm not going to be a homie and talk about mine right now. We can talk about that a little bit later. And I'm going to make it a clean sweep. The Duncan, I'm from the Northeast. When you get those amount of celebrities together, and it felt real. It felt like they were all living their real personalities. You got to love Matt. You got to love J-Lo for what she did. You pay attention to it. I'm not saying it because it was one of two that was in front of us in the ad meter. It was just a good relative communication that engaged everybody. It was a little humor, and I think everyone's going to remember who did it.
Yeah, that's right. That's the key one, right? With all that stuff, all that humor, the celebs, the brand was at the center.
Jim, if I may, I'm going to go with DoorDash.
Yeah.
And the reason I'm saying that is I love, by the way, I like the Dunkin' Donuts commercial a lot, other than Dunkin' does make me think about the Patriots and I hate them with all my heart. But I do think that we continue as an industry, think about things like ad meter, which is, has its, just like everything in our industry, has its strengths and weaknesses for measuring truth. What is truth is first party data. And what DoorDash is waking up with today is a ton of new customers in perpetuity. And so obviously an app is different than a CPG, is different than a car. Everyone plays different. But I will say, thinking back to Denny's a decade ago, even more, I think now with that Facebook coupon, thinking back to Coinbase and the bouncing QR code, I really do think, if I may, for this illustrious group, as we head into 2025, my team knows I'm thrilled with our Ice Spice commercial, and we did Conquesting, and I think we're excited about the Starry thing. But the team knows you know, like I still have feelings that we continue to miss the mark and miss the opportunity for more business oriented moments. I was talking to, I'll give you a for instance, if I was selling something that was $100 to $120 retail as a brand, since it was Super Bowl 58, if you run a clever commercial that says we're going to sell this for $58 for the rest of the Super Bowl until it hits 000, and here's where you go. I think we're similar to how like streaming overtook television and cable, similar to how Kim Kardashian is famous more so than Jennifer Aniston, similar to influencers are more famous than most people. Like as the world turns, I do expect in the next 10 Super Bowls for us to see 20, 30, 40% of the ads to have a clever call to action. I think we put creativity and humor on such a pedestal because we're a creative industry that we leave business too much off the table, and there's real business to be done. And that's why I think DoorDash wins in a real way more so than people realize this morning.
Yeah, I'm with you. Hey, listen, back to our three brands who advertised in the game. I'd like you to each briefly tell a bit of a story or a lesson or a special happening in the process of deciding to be in the big game, creating, executing, evaluating it, as Gary's talking about, tying it to your business. Is there something that you've learned that will be helpful for our listeners in marketing in general, and marketing obviously in the biggest day of marketing, at least in the US, maybe the world? So why don't we start, Brett, back to you. One quick story, lesson learning.
You know, I think for us, so it's we're not newbies to the Super Bowl. This is literally our 24th year running Doritos creative on Super Bowl. And so it's always tricky to say, well, what's different this year? What's impactful this year? What are consumers, what's the truth that we want to talk about with our brand that makes a lot of sense? And I think, you know, one of the great things that we saw on the Super Bowl this year is there's this great mix of emotion, but there's a great mix of fun. And so how do you, what's going to work well for your brand, and how do you bring it to life? And for us, it was a no-brainer what we were going to talk about. We just launched this new innovation. We knew that we really wanted to tell people about Dinamita, but we wanted to do it in a way that reflected like how people felt about this product. It was this amazing, hard to get, but like I can't get enough of type of experience. And so, you know, a lot of the process came down to immediately understanding, yes, we want to be a part of it, because to be honest, Super Bowl for us is it seems weird, but it's like Super Bowl is our Super Bowl, which sounds so ridiculous. But we start from January 1 to Super Bowl with our entire field system gets so excited, and we get in store and we're putting up merchandise, and we're stacking chips up as high as we can. And it's like this momentum of just this spirit of like, yes, like Super Bowl's here. And so we want to pay that off with a lot of fun, but also just a true product truth and having a great experience around what Doritos offers. And for us, you know, talking about something new was really special. What's also really cool about Dinamita is Dina and Mita have known each other for about 35 years. They came out and acting together. We didn't know it. We found them, we cast them separately, and they happen to be really, really good friends. And they were all over the place in Vegas, and it was such a blast to see them come to life. So yeah, we had a lot of fun with the ad, which I think is super, super important, but also understanding the full scale of what it does for our system is also incredibly important for us.
Yeah. It was also beautifully crafted, that ad. It's a beautiful piece of work. Russell, Kia, one lesson learning story.
Have the philosophy of first decision. Why do you want to be in the Super Bowl? Why does a brand be in the Super Bowl? And we have three thoughts. One is you're launching a new product, right? What bigger way of doing that? Second, you're telling something about your brand, or third, you're telling what your brand stands for. And for Kia this year, we did 1 and 2. So obviously, we told them all about the new EV9 3-row SUV, but we're not going to sell 100,000 of those things. It's not a lot of volume. That doesn't make sense. But more importantly, our message was to try to tell people we are committed to the electrified space. In the auto industry, all you hear right now is how electrified is slowing down. Ford's closing plants. They're not going to meet their goals. There's only one thing called Tesla. We have an internal mantra. The mantra is, hey, when you're considering a Tesla, an electrified vehicle, you're thinking, I'm going to look at a Tesla and. We want to be the next word after and. So this is a way of showing that we are committed to the electrified space. We saw not only to our sites, obviously people come to our sites and every site on the brand after, but the shopping sites, the KBBs, the Edmunds, all those, they saw shopping far exceed any of the other auto brands, and quite honestly, any of our past records. So it becomes a no-brainer when you have that messages of one of those three. And this year we had those 1 and 2.
Wow. Well, you have my son who is married, lives in Detroit, they're having their second baby. He's looking at the EV9. He's blown away by it. So you did your job. There's a conquest of one. He's driving a Toyota now. So anyway, we'll see where he comes out. So Corey, bring us home. Elf, Judge Beauty.
Well, first of all,
Corey has the most beautiful background, pink with an elf football. It's so good. So bring us home with your learning, your lesson, your story.
First, I just have to say my 2 new favorite words are electrified space. So thank you very much, Russell, because I love being in electrified space and I love bringing the electricity myself. So I would boil it down to 3 letters, ABC, audience before content. And last year was our first foray at the Super Bowl, and there was a very important reason we were there, and it's because women were being underserved. 115 million people are there, of which nearly 50% were women. So if we do some real girl math here, it's almost 55 million viewers, yet less than 1% of the ads were beauty. So we felt we had an important move that we needed to make to bust the walls, bust the ceiling, and say, hey, the Super Bowl is not for men. The Super Bowl is for every eye, lip, and face. And we are here to serve our audience who is not being served. And we tested that hypothesis last year by bringing Jennifer Coolidge, who is a representation of a wide range of audiences. She was equally popular with Gen Z as she was with older demographics, and the reaction was wildly positive, and our audience wanted us to be there. They wanted to see beauty. They wanted to see brands and products that were meaningful to them, that were sitting it out for a multitude of reasons. So that gave us the energy to come back a second time. And the most important thing this time was us bringing universal truths that were culturally relevant and emotionally resonant for them. The first thing is they absolutely love our Halo Glow liquid filter. The second thing is they're obsessed with courtroom drama, obsessed. And the third thing that was really critical for us is this conversation that is happening around overpaying for beauty. That is a real conversation. People are having arguments with each other. Wait, why do I have to pay $40 if Elf's giving me a better quality for 14? So we took what is a universal truth for our brand. We are here to make the best of beauty accessible. And we brought it together with culture, entertainment, and the center of the zeitgeist, the center of the conversation. And we put it on the biggest stage where the most women are actually attending. So it is really important for us to make sure that our brand is bringing forward a platform and a stage for our audience.
Yeah, we'll give you the last word on that. We're going to have to move.
Hey, Jim,
Russell, go ahead, please.
One comment on
Yeah.
so I 100% agree with Corey. One of the biggest things she just said was the audience. The most nerve-wracking thing that I think any of us on this call have to deal with is, how are you going to make an advertisement and add a message that's going to resonate with over 100 million people, right? Any of us are really good at, okay, let me identify the 20 million people in this thing, the 15 over here. How do you make some message that is going to resonate? She did a great job. Judge Judy, it's in the culture, as she said. And it's the biggest thing that we fret over is like, are we going to tune out half the people when we do our messaging? And you just talked about, a message of one. I think everyone relates to father, grandfather, daughter relationships, whether you have one, whether you know. So I think that's one of the biggest, scariest things that we have to do. Yes. Yeah.
Audience first. Hey, we could go all day with these three. Thank you. We're going to bring in our next panel, roundtable number 2, 3 more advertisers. Gary, a quick comment on what we just heard as we bring in the next group.
I like what Core said. I like, we live for audience. I think audience is a slang term thrown around in corporate America. I think that we really, as an industry, are not consumer-centric enough. I think we're boardroom-centric. I think we're reports-centric. And so I think it's the most important thing I've heard in this chat so far. I would just ask everybody to like, how much more can we actually do, right? Because I think we do things for the system, for our retailers, for our, for our resellers, for the car industry, tier 2, tier 3. There's so much that we do things for that aren't the actual consumer. This is why we built a creative and media company that's based on social first, because it's closest to the consumer, and whoever's closest to the consumer wins. And I think in general, if we can live what Corey said for everyone here, getting closer to the day-to-day marketing that is social. Because it's funny what Brett said, like it's funny. I think of Super Bowl as the end of the year. I think what we as a creative agency have been winning because we're doing marketing all year, and come September, October, November, we're extracting the consumer insights from the social work because we're marketing to so many different consumer segmentations. And then that becomes the brief for our creative, not the other way around. And so I just think that line by Corey about, audience, I think that, and I also think we talk too much about potential reach versus actualized reach.
Yeah.
That's why I love Super Bowl. That 130, which I actually on the record believe is under measured, actually has reach versus the Grammys or the Oscars or a lot of social, a lot of digital, email, billboards. Those are all potential reach metrics that we're spending against. So I would just say more common sense, more audience.
All right. Roundtable number 2. We have 3 guests here, all advertised in the Super Bowl, and all had really funny spots. So I want to welcome Gabrielle Wesley with Mars Wrigley. Of course, M&M's one of my favorite brands for so many years. I'm a huge brand fan. I have it on my desk right now. We have Adam Kornblum with CeraVee, which the spot sort of broke the internet, so I can't wait to hear about that. And then we have Andrea Zareski, previous guest on the CMO podcast. Good to see you again.
Yeah.
With Morgan Stanley and E-Trade, of course, the Pickle Babies. So welcome to the roundtable. Let's start. Let's introduce yourself by what your favorite ad promo experience was during the big experience, the big game. Gabrielle, let's start with you at Mars Wrigley.
Yeah. Hi, Jim. Great to be here today, and good to see you, Gary. I actually agree with you. My favorite ad was DoorDash for the exact same reason that you talked about. There was a lot of fun in that ad, but also a real drive and call to action for the business. And we all know how important first-party data is. I'm sure that DoorDash left the Super Bowl with quite a few customers.
It did.
So Adam, you're almost 25 years with L'Oreal. You know beauty. You did something that bucked a lot of beauty trends. But before we get to that, what was your favorite ad promo experience?
Yeah, so I'm going to just take a different approach for the sake of it. So I think for me, I appreciated what Verizon did because I walked away knowing what the message was. I got it. And then when I look at what Gary was saying, the actualized reach and the actualized buzz, for it to go from TV to social and have that much buzz so quick, and actually translate as one of the most engaged with brands, for me, that measures something. So
Totally agree. Andrea, bring us home.
Gary, thanks for having me. I'm going to shine a light on a first timer, which is Etsy. I think they did such a fantastic job with this truth, which is that feeling you get when someone gives you a gift and you have to reciprocate. The commercial starts off with, "Oh crap," as they see the Statue of Liberty coming into the port. I thought that was hysterical. And the way they lit up this new gift mode feature, which the commercial was all about, they hired Drew Barrymore as their chief gifting officer. I thought that was brilliant. She's so Etsy and so on brand. So I thought that was a fabulous debut.
Super. Well, let's get into what your work, you all did amazing work for the big game. And I'd like you, just as we did the first roundtable, because I think it's so rich with learning, give you sort of an open platform to talk about, again, some story, some learning, some experience that you learned from in doing this work that our audience, our listeners could learn from. So Andrea, let's start with you with the Pickle
Sure.
Babies. This is now what?
Pickle
How many
Babies.
years have you done
We
this?
have done 20 Super Bowl ads. This was the 11th appearance of the E-Trade Baby, third in a row. So, a big legacy of Super Bowl advertising. And I think what E-Trade has done well over the years is stay true to its brand, to its purpose and its brand. It's irreverent. It calls out truths. The baby is iconic in terms of really a spokesperson. And what we did this year is we really tried to amplify a full course strategy before the game, during the game, and after the game. We, to Gary's point, did something a little experiential. We sponsored Pickle Slam, which was a great event. The Sunday when there was no game between the playoffs and the Super Bowl, Steffi Graf, Andre Agassi, John McEnroe, Maria Sharapova playing pickleball stars. E-Trade was all over it. And then what we're really excited about that we're doing after the game, again, Gary's point about performance, how do you do brand and performance, is we know that record numbers of people had a wager over the weekend, and we're betting 68 million people probably had a bet over the weekend, something like $48 billion. We know that people need to think about their money after the game. So we have launched 20 Monday, and we started advertising it right after our spot aired. And we drove everyone to E-Trade to take part of it. We had a big event yesterday. We have tools and education, and we hope we have a special offer, limited time offer to open an account. So we're really looking to be more commercial with this year's event.
That's a beautiful example of experiential and extending the impact of this amazing weekend.
Yeah.
Gabrielle, one of my favorite brands, M&M's, they're almost champions work this year. So maybe tell us about the insight behind that and what you learned in bringing that to life.
Yeah, absolutely. I think one of the things that we can all understand is being, everybody from an insight perspective wants to root for the underdog, but we all have been in situations where we didn't quite make it to that championship stage. I'll tell you, I say this all the time. I grew up in Chicago. I'm a Bears fan. So I know the pain of, wanting to really be on that championship stage. We are located in New Jersey. You guys all know the letdown that the Jets had this year. And, you can name a ton of teams that, wanted to be playing on last Sunday. So they're more almost champions than there are people who actually get that Super Bowl ring. So understanding that insight, M&M's is a brand whose purpose is creating a environment where everyone believes that they belong. And so this year, we really wanted to highlight those folks that worked really, really hard, are very well known, but just never received that Super Bowl ring, so that we honored them with an almost champion ring made out of the delicious signature peanut butter from Peanut Butter M&M's.
Will you continue that idea as we go forward?
Absolutely. This is really the launch and kickoff to an entire year of new product innovation. We've got peanut butter M&Ms in minis and in mega form coming out this year. So providing a year long and hopefully a generation of comfort. So it was really fun. We don't take ourselves too seriously, as it relates to that. And you have to laugh before you cry when you're an almost champion. You know how passionate sports fans are. But it was just something we can all understand and have all been through.
I thought it was a good night for CPG, by the way. Consumer goods, a lot of creativity, call to action, differentiation, true to the brand. That's on a good note. I'll turn to Adam, and your work with CeraVe, which is obviously a trending brand, a booming brand, one of the hot brands of last year. And you took that and you just did something that's brilliant. And so I'd like you to, everyone out there wants to unleash creativity and do something that just breaks the internet. You did it. You're doing it. So tell us how that happened, what we could learn from what you're doing.
Yeah. So, honestly, I would say it starts with that RFP, the brief. I never, like the Super Bowl spot, the ad, that was one element of the brief, right? My ask was I need to create an immersive storytelling world, right? I want to tell it in phases. I want to kind of break the internet before the Super Bowl, right? So we can warm up the tires a little bit before we just hit the gas. And the Super Bowl ad for me, I mean, it's obviously costly, but it's like, it's a big one. But I think for us, each step of the way, every touch point is just as important, right? So we told this Michael CeraVe story. What we're seeing a lot in skincare for us is there's a lot of brands copying, like, you know, specifically CeraVe with some of our codes, right? In our brand, in our logo, it says we're developer dermatologist. All of a sudden, you know, medical skincare is super hot. So everyone's apparently a developer dermatologist. So for us, it was like, all right, well, let's put Michael Cera in the front, you know, let him say that, you know, he just developed the brand. And then let's like steal this brand back from the guy who's trying to steal it from us and create some like wild banter. And like, you know, so phase one is this speculation phase, this fake news. And like we disclosed in all of these fake news posts that it was an ad. But people love stories. They like being part of a story. They like being told a story. So no one really cared. Some people actually just ignored it and was like, I can't believe this guy. Some people called us stupid for not working with him. I mean, it was quite incredible. But the buzz was unbelievable. Like billions and billions of impressions from PR to social. You know, on our website, we had a pop-up saying like, you know, this guy, you know, we appreciate him. He's a great actor, but like we're developer dermatologists, not this guy. You know, we just share a name. You know, so like every touch point had a purpose. And I think for us, it was really like, how do we tell a story? And the Super Bowl, since it's an important moment, which can end the story or, you know, kind of continue it, but be our last phase of storytelling. So we go fake news, the fight goes public, the resolution. And that's where we are today in the resolution stage. But the reality is the RFP and brief was not like, I need a Super Bowl ad. Of course, I put that in. So the agencies were like, yeah, right. Like we're all in, you know, you know what I mean? But it was like, I need a 360 idea. I want a command center. I want to be doing stuff in real time. So like, give me a massive plan that tells a story and brings people along for the ride and builds on what we do every day. We work with creators every day, trying to do funky content, different stuff with derms. So how do we build on what we're good at? And Michael Cera, people were saying that, you know, he developed this brand as a joke on Reddit and other channels. So we do a lot of social listening, search listening. And it was like, we just leaned into a conversation that people had and people enjoyed having and making fun with. And you're really just enjoying even that fake storytelling. So we leaned into what people actually talk about versus just what we want to push.
Go figure.
Yeah. Hey, you all, you know, the work that you did makes people laugh, think, they're proud, they want to be involved in the brand. Could you speak a little bit about the role of the work that you all did for the Super Bowl with your culture inside your company? You know, how do you leverage it that way? How do you use, because obviously every brand is only as good as the culture behind the brand. So what do you do to leverage this creativity, this work, this exposure with your teams, your people? Andrea, you're nodding and smiling.
Sure.
I'll start with you.
Absolutely. That was so important this time to make sure we had a really dedicated employee engagement aspect to our plan. E-Trade's mission is to get off the bench and take charge of your financial life. So with this Money Monday concept the day after, we had a whole employee plan where employees could take part of this event yesterday, take some time to focus on their financial health, look at their portfolio, come up with something new. You know, we were one of only 2 financial services advertisers in the game. Usually we are. And so we really have a nice role in owning that category. And we felt, you know, just like wellness and every other aspect of health, financial health is as important. So we engaged record numbers of employees yesterday, and I think they feel a lot of pride getting involved and being part of that E-Trade brand. The one thing is we're also a sub-brand within Morgan Stanley, part of an acquisition of a couple of years ago. So this is a real way for Morgan Stanley folks, legacy folks, to feel the E-Trade vibe and get involved and be proud of it too.
Adam, how about you with this amazing event?
Yes. So what's interesting about the question is this is the first time L'Oreal as a whole has done a Super Bowl ad, and they're quite a large advertiser. So I think for me, I had to tap into more of the cultural, like entrepreneurial mindset of our super seniors to get everybody excited about this. You know, I think generally the question has been like, CeraVe's become a billionaire brand inside of L'Oreal. how do we continue at this pace? So there was a lot of formulations of figuring out how to sell it in. But I think for me, it was selling it in and then keeping this sold in at the rawest level, and tapping into different pieces of the company, like the entrepreneurial aspect of at least the CeraVe brand and what we stood for, that needed to really filter up to the top of L'Oreal. And they went for it. All in.
Yeah, I'll say.
Hey, Adam, are you going to update your LinkedIn photo?
So
I wasn't going to go there.
I really respect that question. And I swear before this, I did reach out to somebody. I shaved my head like during COVID and never went back. So if you got a person that's pretty legit,
Aren't you in our building?
We are in your building. Yeah.
So why don't you come down? We have plenty of photographers. We will hook it up proper.
I'll ping you.
This is a very productive roundtable.
I appreciate this. This is huge. This is a big win for me.
Gabrielle, would you like your hair done at VaynerX?
I'll pass, but
Okay.
appreciate the offer. I will say that the consumer is always at the heart of everything that we do, and so it was really important throughout our planning process that we started every conversation about Almost Champions with almost an AA style introduction from the teams. Hi, I'm Gabrielle. I'm a Bears fan. Hi, Gabrielle. Tell us about your Almost Champion story, or tell me about how you felt, as it relates who your team is in a time where your team lost. And, it was, the NFL is such an important partner for us in everything that we do, that, we have our team logos and our and that piece all within our teams. And so keeping that at the heart, the insight of being an almost champion and how that feels, and, maybe how you felt ignored or you felt alienated from that, keeping that at the heart, but keeping it fun it was always a part of every conversation. Before every meeting, we had that conversation, we had that tidbit, so that we understood whether it's a social post that we gathered or we grabbed from from our brand or from a team, it really embodied how people felt about being on the stage and not being able to get that Super Bowl ring or be able to win. Trust me, we had a lot of Lions fans at Mars that gave us some really great stories.
I hope you show up at March Madness this year for both the women and the men. I think that would be awesome. There are so many almost champions.
Absolutely. There's so many people who wanted to make it to the big dance or even be part of the 64 teams that aren't. So it will definitely resonate throughout the year.
Gabrielle, Adam, Andrea, thank you for this wonderful discussion. Great lessons. Great to see you as we phase you out and bring roundtable number 3. And I want Gary once again to comment on what we just talked about. It was rich.
Macy asked a great question to Adam. I hope you can answer in the comments. That was a really good combo, obviously. And look, I think again, I touched on this, and I think about these things as like Super Bowl, but then also a lot of people here are friends and acquaintances and have become part of this community. I think if you look at Adam's background when he was at Ogilvy and what he's doing now, it's not confusing that he grew up in a social media lens.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that that's where CeraVe really won. Look,
yep.
We are a social first creative AOR, not because of what I'm saying now. We went into it. And I think CeraVe really did that this year. And I think there's a lot to learn from it. I really do. And I think that everybody here, we launched a new product this year called Super Bowl Surround Sound, so that we could come in and do what we do well, even if we didn't do the Super Bowl spot. And we felt we priced it in a manner, given how much people are spending on Super Bowl media, $7 million. We all know the talent, the production, the creative agency, the director, it gets expensive. And so I was sitting there thinking about like why our stuff did well with Mr. Peanut or Pepsi stuff in the past. And I'm like, man, it is this surround sound. It is the before and after within social, and it's not matching luggage, which I think a lot of people do.
Yep.
It's what we saw Adam do, which was it's creativity in a different way that's contextual to those platforms to create that 1 + 1 = 11. And so I think a lot of you are going to be doing another Super Bowl spot next year. And whether you bring in someone that looks like us or us directly to do this surround sound, or if you can start challenging your creative agencies, especially the classic TV ones, to truly, when they talk about it's omni, we're doing matching luggage. We're doing banner ads and social that match the spot. And that's not, so I think the thing that stood out for me was out of that talk, the M&M stuff is, I mean, like, kudos to them. Like, that's iconic and always right. But I do think it really caught my attention long before the game, what CeraVe was doing. And I think a lot of people here have the potential to do that. And now that everyone's sneaking out their spot before the game, Jim, there's really like no downside to being very thoughtful for the 3 weeks leading up to the game. And think about like the NFL playoffs. You could tell incredible. I mean, there's a lot of creative people here. Yeah. Knowing that the Super Bowl is attached to the NFL playoffs, there's such a natural story to be told in 4 parts. But again, we got to get out of this matching luggage spot down, and we need to get into spot surrounded by. And I think CeraVe, I'm very jealous.
It's beautiful.
So proud of them and Adam. And again, I literally went to Adam's LinkedIn for the purpose of like, this was too like, and sure enough, the social track at an agency.
Yep.
I think this is the modern marketer, if I may. And I think the people,
career path, talent, building the right team, lessons all around.
And there's so much talent here for the people that didn't have the luxury, or did have the luxury, depending on how you want to look at it, of growing up in this social media era. I always get sad when people think it's too late. Oh, I got trained classically in the Procter Kellogg's way. I'm like, sure, but like spend a year and get educated. The best part of COVID was things like this, where we were able to talk to marketers who never even created a TikTok account, and we're like learning. And CeraVe, by the way, a single influencer in Hawaii started let's get right.
Yeah.
Adam, let's talk real shit here. A single human, a boy in Hawaii. I'm very aware because I watch this 24/7. A single boy in Hawaii as an influencer in TikTok has incredible amounts of impact to where the brand is today. And this is something that I just continue to believe that this room underestimates, even the people that are most bought in, me included, by the way. We underestimate the impact. More product will be sold today because of social media than what was sold because of the Super Bowl. And this is something people continue to underestimate. My big takeaway is the true 360 nature of Super Bowl. I think will start to, the cat's out of the bag, and I think people will dissect CeraVe very carefully. And I think I'm happy about that because I think it will get people into the right mindset.
Michelle, I'm twisting an Oreo right now to decide who I go to first in the round table number 3.
Love that.
All right. Listen, hey, welcome to our next group of guests. We have this is an interesting panel to close on because I think it's 3 companies, 3 brands who took different approaches in Super Bowl 2024. So we have David Corns with Open Door, which I think you did what has never been done before. You sold a home during halftime. So we're going to get to that in a minute. We have Michelle Danon, VP of Marketing, Oreo, Mondelez. Amazing. Oreo's back every year, keeps us laughing, keeps us thinking. And we have Alaska Airlines. Is this your first year with the Super Bowl, Eric?
No, we've done a few. Always local, though. You know,
always
airlines,
local. Okay.
Local game, yeah.
Very good. And you included your employees in the executions, along with some great talent. So I'm eager to talk all 3 of you. But let's start by introducing yourself with what was your favorite ad promo experience from the weekend? So Michelle, let's start with you.
Sure. Firstly, thanks for having me, Jim, and Gary. Great to be here. So it's funny as we talk a lot about surround sound, and we think about how do you juice your presence in the big game for more than the 30 or 60 seconds that we buy. And I think for me, we've heard a lot about CeraVe, and I think they did an amazing job. I also think Uber Eats really did a great job in the amplification and the weeks leading up to the Super Bowl. So for me, if I think about how authentically they did that, jumping on the David and Victoria Beckham meme, which was just so self-deprecating and so laugh out loud funny. I've got to give them a ton of credit for that, because I think they really built their coverage strong in the upfront, which is what most of us as players in the big game look to do. We look to amplify and make sure our brands are in the cultural conversation in the run-up, and I think they did a really nice job of that.
Eric Edge of Alaska Airlines. Stories about Nick and Tan later, but tell us which piece of work blew you away.
Our buddies Nick and Tan. I was a big Duncan fan, but I know everyone said that. If you think about people walking away with something stuck in their head in one singular message, I thought State Farm crushed it. Very, very, if you want everyone to associate neighbor with State Farm, well, they did the job. And so that really stood out to me. I have to shout out Dove and NFL. I really think that while it wasn't the pinnacle of creativity, I do think taking airtime to land messaging around bullying with NFL, around body confidence for youth with Dove, you could say what you want about the creative, but thank you for putting that forward. So I did appreciate that as well.
David.
It's funny. My favorite spot this year is not one that I'd usually go for, and it's actually very kind of TV only, which was Reese's Caramel Big Cup, which again is not to my usual tastes. Worked by Eric and Coleman. And what I liked about it is I think people watch the big game, they're pretty distracted while they're doing it. I would say like a 60 feels like a 30 feels like a 15 during the Super Bowl. And I think they stood out, one, actually by not having celebrities, not having big CGI, and just really leaning into their comedy. So it was a clear idea. It was ridiculous, but it was like, that was what was great about it. It made me love the Reese's brand, and it made me want to try a Reese's Big Cup. So that was it. Again, not to my usual taste, surprised it's my favorite, but that was actually the one that stood out to me because it was so clean and crisp. It kind of knew what it was doing and it did it well.
And the insight is people love the basic product. They don't want it to change. Yeah. So it's just beautiful insight. It's all about the product. It was beautifully done. I agree with that, David. And you know what I really like that they did? And then knowing that they might have confused America, they made sure they hit on that. Did your regular thing change? No, I think I agree with you. I thought there was something very classic about it and simple. And I think a lot of times people remember, the amount of people that are going to say, even with the Dunkin', which is so easy to associate with Boston, because I read the commentary, the amount of people are like, the Ben Affleck ad was awesome, right?
Couldn't agree more.
Right, the Scarlett Johansson ad is awesome, right? Like it is. You can get very caught. We did something with Scott's Miracle-Gro, and Nick, you know this. That was the John Travolta, Martha Stewart ad, not Scott. I think that there's something really important, David, there in that ad for sure.
It's funny, Gary, because someone said to me, who won the Super Bowl this year? And I said, I think it was the celeb talent agents that won the Super Bowl.
Always.
It was. And I think there's a
CBS too. Overtime was good for CBS.
Yeah, it was very good. But there's a lot. One interesting thing I realized too was Ali Koteam Brand Growth Group called out the majority of the celebs are actually Gen X plus this year. So it's actually kind of an older generation of celebs too, which is interesting, probably because we all live in a very different media world. So there's very few that all of America get. But I think, the brands represented here today, I think did celeb well, but I think it's, there becomes a risk over time of borrowed equity, and how do you make that precious time about you?
It's why I also really like the Google Pixel ad, because I still believe if you make people cry and emotional, I'm really hoping in the next 5 years that was very solid, but somebody's going to take the risk to truly make America cry. And we've all seen videos that have done it. They don't look like a commercial. They look more like an actual piece of content, but I think somebody's going to go for it because I think it matters.
I missed the
empathy plus creativity.
Yeah, I
kills it every time.
An imported from Detroit or a Halftime America this year. Felt like that was missing.
But,
yeah. Hey, for our roundtable, I'd like you to all go around and talk about what your ambition was this year. with your involvement with the Super Bowl? Because you have three different approaches here, right? So talk a bit about what your ambition was. Did you fulfill it? How do you feel about it? What did you learn as you did that? So Eric, let's start with you. Alaska Airlines, a regional player in this whole Super Bowl experience. Your line, we care a lot. You have some great talent. You bring your employees into the execution. So please go with your ambition and how you feel about delivering.
Yeah. I mean, you said it, airlines are a local game. And so I think really engaging consumers in local markets is key. We're launching a new campaign. It was a pivot for the brand. We've talked about care. You mentioned Tan. We had Tan France at the core of that for the past few years. We had Safety Dance in the middle of COVID, which also ran during Super Bowl. So we've had these moments of care. But what we wanted to land this time was just a differentiated product that we have. We wanted to lean into a product message. And so maybe what we're all talking about, we actually stripped back celebrity. We didn't work with Tan again. We pulled the celebrity piece out and we focused wholly in on the product. And so if you're in one of our key markets where we ran the ads, you saw us with our core humor that we bring to the table. You saw us talking about the product and the fact that we have the most legroom in our premium and first class cabins. And we said, let's do it. Let's go all in. Back to Gary's point on reach. This is a moment of authentic reach. I went into this saying this is not going to be the celebrity spot that gets top of ad meter. And I was fully okay with that because I knew that we were going to launch a differentiated message in a way that was authentic to the brand. And instead of turning away from it because we were nervous that it was a little bit not on that traditional Super Bowl track, we said, we're going to lean all into this. And this is going to be the launch moment for our campaign.
Beautiful.
Love that. By the way,
Gary.
I apologize, but Eric's point is massive. This goes back to my DoorDash thing. Like, I do think we all have to be a little bit careful to like do things for the award or the metric or the report. Like, that was a business talk, what Eric just did. And that gets me fired up. And I do think you can do both. And I think we all know that. But I do think I can speak because I've interviewed 1 million of them, all the ECDs and GCDs and CDs and CCOs. Every creative agency only wants the hype. There's zero business DNA in that part of it. That means everyone here needs to fight for that even more.
And I love also they took the care idea and you just stay with it.
Yeah, that's right.
You execute differently, but you stay with the core idea of the brand. So Michelle, this isn't your first rodeo, your first Super Bowl. Oreo's been a player. It's obviously an iconic brand. Talk about your ambition this year and how do you feel about it?
Yeah, I mean, it's I think when you bring a brand like Oreo to the big game, it's not about driving overall awareness, right? Like, this is a brand, 98% awareness, incredibly iconic. So 110 years old. And for us, it was really about, as we think about Oreo, always wanting Oreo to be at the front and center of cultural conversation and in the cultural zeitgeist. That was a big part of our decision to come back to the big game. So the consumer on Oreo is so ubiquitous, spans so many age demos, as is those that watch the big game on the other side. So that was a perfect partnership for us, I would say, as we thought about it. We're all about playfulness on Oreo, and playfulness is at our heart. So in our ad, you'll see a bit of playful, provocative, we're being playfully provocative. So just pushing the edge of playfulness, given the game that we're in. And for us, it was really about launching this new platform. So this idea of twist on it. So twist on it, we know for Oreo, is a ritual with consumers. They twist their Oreo before they eat it. So it was a perfect communications platform for us to say, okay, we really believe in this. To the conversation around distinctiveness, it's the biggest mistake any marketer will make, right? You spend X millions getting your ad in the big game, but no one remembers it's for your brand. So being distinctive was so important. And that's what we so loved around this idea of the twist on it and Oreo being the decision maker. So we really leaned into that. And then it was great to be able to tell the multiple stories of how Oreo has helped make decisions through the test of time. But I would say it was always distinctively Oreo in its tone and how we were trying to show up, a little bit more playfully provocative. But most of all, we wanted to entertain and have people walk away with that was an Oreo ad.
After you twist, do you take the cream off first and then eat the chocolate wafers, or do you do no?
All in. Oh, one and dunk, baby. That's the way it goes in my house.
Okay. I'm an old school. I take the cream off before I eat the chocolate wafers. That goes back to when I was like 3 years old. So anyway.
I love that the ritual is so embedded
Oh,
that
yeah.
that's still the way you eat your Oreo.
So David, Open Door. You did. I've been following this. I think it's so clever. It's so fun. It's so on brand. It's a demo. Tell us about your whole approach this year, what your ambition was, and how you feel about delivering it.
Yeah, I mean, part of our marketing strategy is kind of how do we hack into culture. We're unlike some of the other brands represented today. We're still on the path of building aided awareness for Open Door and building it into an iconic brand. So really, we started, at the right place to start, which is, what's the idea? And Mischief brought us this great idea, which was like, our product is simple, certain, fast. We've digitized real estate. So, regardless of what's happening, it doesn't matter if the house is a mess, if Usher's playing in the back room, you can sell your home to Open Door in less time than it takes for a half time of a game. And that's really where it started. So we were like, okay, well, let's walk the walk. Let's do it for real. So knowing we bought regionally, we bought in Atlanta. So we ran in Atlanta, which is the hardest market to sell your home in right now. So it's very strategic why we bought regionally there. And then knowing the pre-hype of the Super Bowl game, we have teasers running on air talking about this halftime showing to kind of build PR interest, and got a huge amount of free PR impressions, because not only were we talking about, the speed and the ease of the product, but the fact that we were willing to put our money where our mouth is and do this for real, I think, got us a lot of attention. So there was the build up, and then on the actual night, if you were watching in Atlanta, we cut kind of live to a real person on their real phone in their real house, where they talk to, they're about to do this virtual tour and potentially sell their home to Open Door. During the halftime show, you could go to opendoor.com, and we streamed our virtual assessment live. I think did it in less than 9 minutes. And then when you got to Q3, cut back live to the real customer's phone, in their real house, outside their real house, where they announced, like, that's it, we're done, we're selling our house to Open Door. So it was really designed to like kind of hijack and hack the pre-hype ahead of Super Bowl, knowing that we wouldn't have national coverage on the day. But it was a great experience and a world first. We sold, someone sold us a house.
That's a brilliant concept, brilliant idea. Hey, we're getting close to signing off. This has been marvelous all around. From the Vayner team, are there any questions that have been coming in the chat? Any themes? Anything you want us to address before we sign off our last roundtable?
I'll let the team jump in because I'm running late for something, unfortunately. I just want to say thank you to everybody for your time. Jim, always a pleasure, and wish everybody a happy and healthy year.
Thank you, Gary, for everything.
Love you. Go ahead, team.
Avery, Andrea, anyone, any questions that we should bring to the group? Any themes that you think are worthy of discussing?
I think there's been a really healthy chat. So thanks everybody for leaning in. I think the remarks about staying pure to the business, I think it's one of those things that it's hard politically to make, all parties happy. There seems like there's a lot of interest there. And I think the metrics, how do we make sure that we're looking at the impact overall? Let's see. I think there's a lot of the things we brought up and Gary brought up because we were all leaning into the chat big. So really appreciate everybody staying a little bit over. And I think the idea of coming together live and in person next year would be phenomenal. We can still stream it out to everybody else, and free headshots for all.
So many massive themes, Jim. Thank you so much for bringing everybody together and moderating. You absolutely always crush this. I feel like we could talk about the power of the female dollar. We could talk about culture. We could talk about celebrity. We could talk about social versus kind of on air. So we'll have to, bake that out for next time around. But just want to say huge thank you to our partners and these wonderful panelists for joining us. This has been really fascinating and so fun.
Hey, one final thought for all of you. When I was back at P&G many years ago and we had not advertised in the Super Bowl, I used it as a contest. So I would pay for the spot to the most creative team. And it wasn't just that, it was kind of a gimmick, but it just made a statement that we're raising our bar, that we want all teams to stretch, that we want to change the way we think about creativity and impact and effectiveness. So the question I asked one of the roundtables about culture, internal culture, never forget the power of this to engage your employees and raise the bar for all of us on our potential to do amazing work. So anyway, I think that's a wrap. Thank you, everyone.
That's a wrap.
Glad you had a happy Super Bowl season. See you in March Madness.
Thanks, everyone.